That night, Haruto stood in the center of a huge magic circle, clutching a piece of paper in his hand and watching the time tick away as the tower clock showed the late hour and the moon brightly illuminated the empty area. Under the same sky, he mentally noted that as soon as he saved the other world, he would finally be able to return home, after which he silently said goodbye to Japan, addressing her silently. Inspired, he stepped forward sharply, declaring the beginning of the journey to another world, while mystical symbols flashed around him. A moment later, he leaned back, allowing himself a short respite and acknowledging that everything had gone well. 4 years ago, a young summoner appeared in Andalusia, charged with a single task, to crush the demon lord, and in the meantime, he bravely faced armored warriors with drawn blades. Soon the young man collapsed onto his back as the robed figure raised his arms, and it became clear that after serving the Empire, he had been forcibly sent back to Earth. Today, he mentally summed up the fact that he was returning 3 months later, already possessing the power inherited from the ancient hero. Closing his eyes and raising his palms, Haruto activated a technique called soil limitation while remembering something he had long wanted to accomplish. Meanwhile, one of the companions became noticeably nervous while the other carried the girl, and then several armed men approached the cart, discussing fantasies about life among the many beauties in Andalusia. He smiled awkwardly, scratching the back of his head, and cautiously asked for details about this country. Sitting next to him, his cheeks burning, Haruto hesitated again before asking about the City of Towers, while his interlocutor explained that it was the first road through the kingdom of Milis, comparable to Tokyo. Meanwhile, the horse pulled the covered cart along the winding dirt road across the plain towards the distant mountains, while thoughts turned to the kingdom of Milis and the City of Towers. Later, a busy street with high-rise towers and people passing by stretched out before them, and one of them remembered how the royal family had summoned him and then deprived him of his freedom, forcibly returning him to Earth. Soon, at the entrance to the Adventurers Guild with the sign of crossed weapons, a voice greeted them, addressing Amaji-sama and announcing their arrival. Standing by the wooden door with a backpack over his shoulder, Haruto expressed his gratitude for the help he received in dangerous places. A confident companion with a ponytail at the back of her head offered to handle the registration, politely responding to Amagi-san's request. He asked her to call him Haruto-kun, causing her to repeat his name a little more quietly. Laura let out a heavy sigh, noting that everything was finished, while he relaxed in her arms with a satisfied smile, after which she hinted that now she could allow herself something immodest. Confused, he pointed to the form and asked if she could read and write. In response, she admitted to having poor writing skills, so another offered to fill it all out for her, and then asked if she wanted to become an adventurer, to which she agreed. He looked away in embarrassment when the girl with the ponytail suggested they take up literacy, after which she asked him where he was born, but he admitted that writing was still almost impossible for him. The knight mentioned the village of Mild and added that complete immersion was essential for carrying out assignments, while a witch in a wide-brimmed hat stood quietly next to him, hiding part of her face in shadow. Haruto collected his thoughts, determined to maintain his composure, while the small chibi-style figure clarified which of the proposed types he intended to choose. He wondered whether he should learn to read from now on or find an assistant who could fill out the paperwork, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword in its sheath. After a short pause, the guy asked if the job included demon slaying and escorting, while Laura calmly waited for him to continue. The red-haired girl responded animatedly that excellent results had already been achieved in these areas, accompanying her words with a soft smile. He then, blushing slightly, asked for a fingerprint to complete the procedure, and the woman he was talking to found the gesture sweet. A moment later, the young man looked at the carelessly written note, assuming that his name had been written by Etna-san, whose handwriting seemed rather clumsy to him. He was standing at the counter when the woman with the tail explained that the paperwork was almost complete and the guild card would be made immediately, asking him to wait a little. Meanwhile, he was informed that the sun would soon set and that Etna had arrived asking for a place to stay for the night, which caused a look of confusion to cross his face. He felt his cheeks warm up again, realizing that the time to look for a place to live had already been lost, while the girl was comfortably positioned in front of him, striking a provocative pose. Celestia inquired about the details of the assignment, and Haruto scratched the back of his head, thinking that what he heard seemed to not match his memories. After that, he explained that this time the hero had come from the royal capital with the mission of suppressing the demons along the southern road. Hearing of the hero's presence, the young man noticeably perked up, while the girl calmly confirmed the discovery of the goblins. She calmly asked him if he didn't know about the hero, and at that moment he stopped, doubting the very fact of his existence, asking to give him a minute. Confused and slightly confused, Haruto explained that the royal order had recently recognized the bearer of the holy sword and presented him to the public as a hero. He leaned on the table and wondered if a hero was even needed, to which the girl in the apron pointed out that after the Demon Lord's defeat, there was no longer a need for one. The guy felt sweat break out on his back, declaring that he had not heard about the death of the Overlord, and Laura, covering her mouth with her hand, asked again whether he had really been defeated. The young man remembered hearing about this somewhere from a child, and wondered where he had disappeared to, barely audible as he spoke his thoughts. Finally, he laughed awkwardly, admitting the possibility of a misunderstanding, while the girl with 2 ponytails explained that she believed that the Demon Lord's defeat meant he would become a subject. He raised his blade sharply in a defensive stance and asked with disbelief if there really were multiple Demon Lords, after which the conversation smoothly moved on to the task of suppressing them. Laura, with a confident half-smile, explained that for people in every country there is a ruler of darkness, while emphasizing the seriousness of what had happened. The young man froze, uttering a confused interjection, and someone's voice from the side asked whether he had understood what was said. Meanwhile, Rin cheerfully agreed to take on the task of exterminating the goblins, expressing her willingness, and someone off-camera responded with words of gratitude. Haruto, thinking, noted that, although there were people in the guild, being alone wasn't the best option, and so the thought of being able to support them himself seemed encouraging. She suddenly asked if he knew about Andagulia, to which he asked again the name, as if he had heard it for the first time. After this, the guy nervously looked at the world map and explained that he couldn't find his way around here, since it didn't look at all like the map of Andalusia. Sweat broke out on his temple as he wondered if the Andalusia he knew even existed, and the girl asked with a soft smile if everything was okay. The star-studded night sky hung over the quiet building, and it became clear that after Etna's inquiries about housing and nearby weapon shops, the meeting was scheduled for 8 in the morning at the guild. Lying on the bed, he reflected on how he had previously considered this city unknown, but now he was inclined to think that he had found himself in a completely different place. He went over the unsettling sensations and strange details in his mind, including signs he couldn't read, while remembering that Etna's notes didn't look so bad. He suddenly woke up, yawned, and picked up his phone, surprised that it was already morning, while the alarm clock was ringing insistently next to him. With his eyes closed and a slight blush on his cheeks, he thought about how he was in contact with 2 girls at once, one on each side. Meanwhile, the owner behind the counter noticed the guest's awakening and asked if he had managed to rest well. The young guest replied to the elderly owner that he had not slept so comfortably for a long time, and he laughed merrily, happy with what he heard. Holding the sandwich, Haruto admitted to himself that the bed was indeed comfortable, although he was in no hurry to say it out loud. He arrived at the inn half an hour before the appointed time, calculating that the short sword cost 30,000 colas and a night in the room cost 4,000, while the client thanked him for the food and decided to take the box with him. Leaning confidently on the table, the young man noted that more than 10 minutes had passed since 8 o'clock, while simultaneously reflecting on his own charm. Sitting with hope in his eyes, he thought about how to win Etna over, and nearby stood a woman in a skirt only partially visible from behind. Laura greeted Sharon briskly, asking for her favor for the day, while he quietly remarked that there was no need to shout, and Sharon responded with a calm apology. Laura animatedly confirmed that her grandmother's words were true, and her enthusiasm was accompanied by a confident smile. Haruto found himself between 2 girls who were chatting cheerfully, and he himself thought about his feelings from yesterday, not fully understanding what exactly had touched him then. The young man's cheeks warmed slightly at the thought that such attention was not so unpleasant, and at that moment one of them introduced Sharon to him as an adventurer. He quickly explained that he had recently defeated 5 dangerous bandits and was proficient in magic, after which a remark was made that Sharon had also only recently joined the guild. Laura reintroduced her companion and explained that she had begun her adventurous journey almost simultaneously with him, adding that going alone was risky, so it was better to act together. Then he and his short-haired partner leaned over the map, pointing to the marked search area, and she clarified that it was enough to clear the goblin territory. Nearby, a character in striped sleeves held a fallen enemy upside down and noted that the desired area was located just outside the city walls. Haruto asked not to use honorifics, reminding them that they were now comrades, and insisted on being called by his first name, after which he agreed to go with Sharon. He smiled encouragingly, while his fiery-haired companion, clenching her fist, nodded but almost immediately doubted herself, and then he briefly supported her with the word that everything would be fine. Catching his breath and holding his hand, the young man said that he had succeeded, and nearby there was praise for a successful first attempt. A man with a towel around his neck jokingly offered to get rid of germs, showing his palm and part of his body up close. After a short pause, Haruto suggested they continue on their way, thinking about how useful it would be to have healing magic, and the girl sitting next to him quietly thanked him. He listened silently as they praised him for helping them get through the forest and directing their actions in battle, and the words about him being amazing sounded quite sincere. The young man dismissed the matter, claiming it had all gone smoothly, but Laura noted that it was largely due to Sharon's talent. The short-haired girl questioned why the difficult order of exterminating goblins had been chosen, wondering out loud if it had truly been difficult. Laura, slightly embarrassed, admitted that she wanted to support the hero, who wanders the world helping people and fighting the demon lord, because this was his mission. Haruto carefully added that he had once made a promise to his grandmother to always come to the aid of others, and someone from above had listened carefully to his words. He thought about the importance of supporting a brave hero, even though even a hero may be just a piece in someone else's game, watching as he goes ahead. After this, the young man suggested moving on, and his companion replied that she had already rested, while he hesitantly wondered whether anyone had helped him in a similar way in the past. Finally, he and Laura stood before the huge oar towering over them. She secretly clutched the dagger behind her back, and Haruto could hardly believe the size of the enemy. Haruto shuddered, realizing that his search up to this point had failed to detect the monster standing so close, and the monster itself seemed to have not expected such a close proximity either. He and the girl involuntarily approached each other, both tensed, sensing the presence of a huge creature, and at that moment there was a feeling as if something new was being born right here. The next second, pain pierced him, his hand stopped obeying him, and then a powerful blow threw him into the water, raising a spray. He emerged and quickly called out to Sharon, asking if she was okay, but he thought that if the blow had hit her, things would have ended much worse. Laura, with wet temples and ragged breathing, repeated that everything had happened too suddenly, trying to make sense of what had happened. Haruto, feeling a surge of heat, insistently called for him to get up, his voice filled with both determination and anxiety. Suddenly, a cry rang out that there was danger behind him, and before he could turn around completely, a sharp object dug into his shoulder, causing him to inhale sharply. Gritting his teeth, he motioned for Sharon to step back a little, but she refused to leave him alone, her gaze firm. He then turned to Laura, insisting that her presence would not change anything and would only put her at risk, causing her to freeze, unsure of what to do. Left face to face with his opponent, the young man carefully evened out his breathing and decided that for now it was enough that his companion retreated. He held out his palm and declared that all that remained now was to finish what he had started, while someone nearby took a step closer. Raising his sword to his face, Haruto reminded himself that the hero's strength was still at its peak, and his resolve to see this through to the end grew stronger. Concentrating, he grabbed the bow, the arrows behind his back jingled, and someone's surprised cry coincided with the cold thought that the enemy was already doomed. Covering his mouth with his hand, he thought about the explosion of magic he had just seen, and from the side he heard a question asking if he was okay. Meanwhile, a confident warrior in armor reported that she felt an extraordinary surge of magic and hurried here, and someone nearby could not hide their admiration for her appearance. Haruto cautiously asked who was standing in front of him, and the answer was that it was a worthy warrior who had come to help. The stranger confidently introduced himself as Ryan, giving his full name Ryan Van Rule, while standing against a backdrop of trees. The young man in turn identified himself and mentioned that the girl was with him, and Sharon looked confused behind his back until he calmed her down and offered to go out. Ryan asked if she was hurt, and the blonde replied that everything was fine, introducing herself as Sharon. Haruto, feeling embarrassed, thanked him with sincere words of appreciation. Laura, breathing heavily and wiping sweat from her forehead, quickly asked if everything was all right, standing in the middle of a forest clearing, where traces of a recent battle still gleamed on her armor, and her sword remained at the ready. Haruto apologized and thanked her for supporting him while being with the two of them, and she blushed slightly in response, admitting that it would be awkward to go home surrounded by those two. He awkwardly repeated his apology, but his companion insisted that the monster looked truly frightening, and her voice sounded puzzled by what had happened. The young man admitted that it was stupid to leak it, after which someone called him the worst and a pervert, and the third participant in the scene was simply perplexed by what it all was, adding that they could only thank him. Haruto honestly stated that this was the first time he had encountered such a creature, and Laura explained that monsters can accumulate enormous power over time, although this was also the first time she had encountered such a case. Then he thought that something like this was only possible with the intervention of a necromancer, but he imagined that the revived creatures would look like skeletons without flesh, and this version seemed dubious. He tried to comprehend what had happened, but Laura hurried him, asking why he was hesitating, and he briefly replied that he was already on his way. Later, he and the girl were walking through a busy market, where she said that she would be heading to the guild to report, and he hesitantly noted that this was acceptable, although there was doubt in his tone. He started to explain something, but his companion immediately calmed him down, assuring him that she would not mention anything related to him, and asked him not to worry. The bright-haired girl suddenly smiled warmly and sincerely thanked him, her openness and joy sounding genuine. The short-haired girl noted that Haruto was a kind person, and someone nearby silently doubted whether this was really true. She added that the cause of the incident was still unknown, and the young man confirmed that the guild would investigate. Haruto looked puzzled when the cheerful girl announced that the report was complete, but he countered that he hadn't turned anything in yet. Meanwhile, Sharon was enthusiastically practicing punches and kicks, and it was clear that she had asked for today's session. He stood calmly opposite, while Laura lay on the ground and exclaimed with annoyance that she had not been able to touch him even once. Haruto admitted with a slight grin that he couldn't resist the urge to touch, and Laura, sweaty and tense, called him a pervert. He was a little nervous, although he continued to smile, and she, still lying down, teased him with the promise that one day she would definitely hit him in the face. The young man, wiping away his sweat, reminded him that the hero would be stopping in the city today, emphasizing the significance of this day. He then stated that he would return to the guild for a new quest, and Laura enthusiastically noted that the city was preparing for the festival and asked what he would do next. At the end, the bright girl cheerfully said that she was returning to the inn and would see him later, and he, slightly confused, asked again what exactly she meant. Haruto walked confidently down the narrow alley, thinking about going into the guild and talking to Etna-san, while passers-by calmly walked past him. Meanwhile, Laura lay on the ground, exhausted, declaring that she could no longer eat and her fatigue was obvious. He stopped mid-sentence when he noticed her in this position and tried to look away, trying to pull himself together in this awkward situation. He worriedly asked if she was okay, suggesting that she rest at home, knowing that leaving her there would not be the best decision. Laura, looking at him stubbornly through her fatigue, suddenly asked who he was, and this caught him off guard. He only asked again in confusion, while she covered her mouth with her hand as if she had suddenly realized something. Haruto quickly explained that he was just passing by, and Celestia, her eyes widening, hesitated, not knowing what to say. Laura confidently asked if she was being stupid while he scratched the back of his head, and Celestia turned away and admitted that she no longer remembered the details, suggesting that they leave everything as is. He tensed slightly as she approached and asked if the hero would be showing up today. Smiling modestly, Laura agreed that the bustle around was due to the ongoing festival. The fair-haired companion smiled faintly, noting that she understood what was happening and was looking forward to something. Haruto thought about the strange girl, remembering her cute appearance, then thanked her and said goodbye, getting ready to leave. Suddenly he was called out too, and the girl happily showed off her new dress, explaining that Etna-san had chosen it, which made him sheepishly remark that it suited her very well. The short-haired woman admitted that she had never worn anything like this before and felt insecure, after which she sincerely thanked him. Walking beside her, he wondered if he could take her hand, while she smiled with a slight blush and laughed quietly. Haruto was embarrassed, and his companion suddenly realized that Rion was the hero, although she had not realized it right away before. He looked around in confusion when a cheerful girl dressed as a nun inquired about what was going on, and in his thoughts he involuntarily compared his comrades with those around him. Standing among the crowd, the young man thought that this world was different from his previous one, and it was no longer possible to change it. He supported the girl with a nervous smile who screamed in surprise, and hope flared up inside him to take advantage of the chance. Finally, he and she turned to the voice calling for the heroes, while a crowd had gathered around the cart discussing where the hero himself was. Laura introduced herself with complete confidence as Laurier Van Steinhardt, and then, with a blazing gaze, declared herself the demon, as if challenging everything around her. Haruto frowned when the short-haired girl called out to him and asked what was going on with the child, and he was wondering what the little girl was even talking about. She looked puzzled in response and did not fully understand his reaction, as if she had expected a completely different answer. The next moment, both girls jumped off the roof, and one remarked that she thought the crowd would panic, while the other asked if they were afraid of dying while the people below watched. The blonde laughed loudly and enthusiastically supported what was happening, spreading her arms and beaming with joy. The blonde declared herself to be the hero, Ryan Van Roll, and addressed the dark-haired girl, calling her a demon and asking why she had come to this city, while the hooded girl looked tense. Laura thought for a moment, then perked up and said with a cheerful intonation that they really had a hero in front of them. Haruto glanced to the side and asked if she was okay, but someone's voice noted that it was hard to judge by appearances. Laura boldly extended her hand forward and challenged the hero to a duel, her determination leaving no doubt. Charlotte accepted the challenge but firmly stated that a fight was impossible within the city limits, while behind her, 3 women closely monitored the situation. Haruto suggested going out into the open field beyond the walls, and Laura, with a confident snort, told him to show the way. He hesitated when they suggested he change his clothes and leave his weapon, and the short-haired girl insisted that she would go with them. She was a little confused, but nodded in agreement, holding the hem of her dress as if adjusting it. Haruto found himself facing a confident opponent, who asked if they were ready to begin, clarifying how he intended to fight and whether his companions would join him. The young warrior drew his sword and declared that this was a fair duel, where he would fight without tricks. He repeated that he could handle it alone and prepared to strike, gripping the hilt with full determination. Unicram told Ryan that he understood everything, and Ryan assured him that he would intervene if the situation got out of control. Laura, with a slight smile, promised to support him in a dangerous moment, and a challenge could be seen in her gaze. Laurier spoke loudly to Ryan von Roll, who calmly replied that he was the bearer of the holy sword. Someone clenched their fist and called upon the mighty winds to form a shield, raising their second hand, around which magical energy swirled. The long-haired girl confidently raised her palm and created a windshield, which instantly stood in front of her, intercepting the blow of the opponent who jumped towards her. Haruto and the other boy noticed the barrier forming around them and exchanged surprised glances, while Laura flushed with irritation and stepped forward, preparing to intervene. In the forest shadows, he stood next to Rin, who was pondering the difference between greater demons and ordinary ones, while also noticing that he was having a hard time. Meanwhile, the horned demoness, with a confident posture, raised her hand and explained that the greater demons exist on their own and do not obey anyone, unlike the others. The short-haired, fair-haired character, covered in sweat, quickly added that the greater demons looked like humans and possessed magic, while the others were more reminiscent of animals. Laura spoke of magic with a defiant smile, and Tatiana, holding the sword, awakened the power contained in the sacred blade, and it became clear that it was this difference that would decide the outcome of the confrontation. Charlotte, tensing every muscle, concentrated all her energy into a spell and unleashed an attack called Holy Sword Light on the enemy. Haruto watched silently as Laura confidently demonstrated the power of the holy weapon, and the events were exactly as he expected. She slammed the ground hard, declaring that this was what true strength looked like, and her stance spoke of steadfastness. He stood with his arms crossed as someone nearby noted with disbelief that the power of the greater demons was far superior to that of ordinary ones. Haruto fell silent, not fully understanding the next course of events, while the worried girl asked what would happen next, and the dark-dressed rival mockingly asked if they had something more impressive. He noticed that she looked powerless against her opponent, and at that moment Laura worriedly wondered if he would withstand the onslaught. The long-haired girl folded her arms across her chest and declared that everything was now clear, after which she asked whether her opponent was a hero. The young warrior, clutching the hilt of his sword and covered in sweat, asked again in amazement, and someone's voice from the side noted that heroes show strength only for the sake of others. Kagu said with a smug grin that all she had to do was start by eliminating their comrades. Laura rushed forward furiously, demanding that he not dare speak like that. But her red-haired opponent calmly acknowledged the hero's increased strength and immediately added a restrained remark. The girl with long hair and small wings firmly declared that she would not allow harm to come to Aura and Carolina, and her rival abruptly stops nearby. One of them angrily demanded that the girls not be touched anymore, while the other mockingly remarked that a man surrounded by useless women was hardly worthy of respect, and sarcastically asked if that was their name. Haruto privately decided that the hero acted too impulsively and was easily thrown off balance, unlike himself, who did not consider himself either naive or stupid, and this made Laura look at him with concern. Without wasting any time, she unleashed a powerful spell called Roaring Blast, shouting out an oath and aiming the attack towards the hidden enemy. Then she stretched, as if relaxing her shoulders after the strain, and announced that the hero had already lost, while two women nearby crouched and whispered, one of them wondering how it had all turned out this way. Haruto didn't hide his surprise, and the long-haired girl coldly remarked that she hadn't expected such weakness from him, her gaze expressing slight disappointment. He was embarrassed when the cheerful Rin excitedly asked if he was the same one she saw that morning. The young man admitted that he had not expected to encounter a greater demon, and at that moment the short-haired companion called out his name with obvious shock. Four characters leaned over the edge of the ledge. One remarked that their meeting was fate, another advised them to give up and return home, while the girl below quietly objected that things were not so simple. She smiled slyly and said that it was a pity, but she would have to tidy things up a bit to reveal the hero's true strength. Haruto sharply warned Sharon to retreat and swung his sword furiously, shielding her from the oncoming threat. He admitted to himself that he had no choice, while Laura, crossing her arms and smiling confidently, doubted that he would be able to defeat her alone. Suddenly, she cast the Ice Shackle spell, catching her opponent's legs in mid-air, and she was surprised by the unexpectedness and grace of the move. During the intense fight, Haruto quickly grabbed Laura's wrist, causing the crowd to cheer, amazed by the strength of their duel. Covered in sweat, he asked her if she was really that strong, and she squeezed her injured hand with a confident grin and teased him in a challenging tone. Haruto asked Celestia in surprise if she was using completely silent magic, and she became embarrassed, reacting with a tense pause. Meanwhile, the cheerful girl leaned on him and admitted that she had not experienced such joy for a long time, asking if he was strong enough, and he noted that a lot had happened to him too. Laura, clutching her injured hand, heard from him that as a higher demon she would recover quickly, although her hand would not grow back immediately in the current situation, and she tried to object. Again, the same lively companion pressed herself against him and repeated that she had not received such pleasure from a fight for a long time, inquiring about his strength. He looked away and admitted that his path had not been easy, and there was a note of caution in his tone. Haruto thought with a tired expression that the fight was not as exciting as expected, and Laura curiously remarked that it was strange not to find joy in fighting. She burst out laughing and admitted that it had been incredibly satisfying to experience such complete defeat. The blonde man openly stated that he had always been looking for someone who would surpass him, and now, having found such a person, he felt something akin to love, while the short-haired girl listened to him in silence. Haruto was surprised when she confidently promised to stay by his side forever, adding that he should appreciate such devotion. Haruto stretched and yawned loudly while the long-haired girl slept peacefully on the bed, snoring softly with a relaxed smile. He flushed with irritation and complained about being pushed out of bed, glancing at his calmly resting companion. She remembered how yesterday her left arm had been completely severed, and although she felt guilty, the sight of her right arm torn from her shoulder still caused anxiety. Laura winced quietly as someone squeezed her hand, thinking about how suddenly she had heard the confession after yesterday's fight. He noted that she was objectively quite cute and decided to include her in his plans given the free space for the greater demon, while gently touching her chest. The young man explained that although Ryan and the others were unhappy with this turn of events, he still managed to convince them, and the group reacted in different ways. Ron looked worried and irritated, realizing that despite his strength, he couldn't do anything. The blonde man with the high collar just smiled softly, declaring that he had nothing to add. Rin was surprised to see Haruto standing confidently, while Laura acknowledged the result as worthy, and the narration reminded her that Ryan was a hero. Haruto asked her with a grin what she was doing, hinting that he understood everything, but in response he received a blow, followed by an angry denial. Celestia was surprised to see how someone could knock him down with such a blow, when a loud crash was heard nearby. Laura was surprised to hear that she too was considered impressive. He thought he had expected her to be much more mature, but for a greater demon, she was still young. The girl woke up alone in a huge southern forest without family or loved ones, among trees and stones. A muscular man carried an unconscious body over his shoulder as he walked through the forest, where two more lay fallen nearby, hinting at a recent fight. When Lori finally reached the city of Torres, she learned of the existence of a powerful man known as the Hero. She transferred some of her magic to a nearby demon, strengthening it to test the hero's strength as he prepared to fight the snarling monster. Inspired, she watched as the hero dealt with the monster with one blow, and decided that she could expect a lot from him. Haruto, blushing with annoyance, blamed the Goblin King for the current situation, while a tired Laura lay there, breathing heavily. She remembered their first meeting in the alley, extended her hand forward, and thought that now all this was left behind. Haruto thought with a slight smile that even a greater demon could live among humans if he was taught human knowledge and norms, while Celestia lay on the bed feeling relieved and understanding why everything had turned out this way. He asked awkwardly if he could stay for a little while, swallowing and feeling his face begin to warm. The confused young man picked up the object and asked the woman lying in front of him what he thought he was doing, while she calmly looked up at him. He remembered how she had insisted the previous night that she had no interest in him, despite his condition, and the thought made him tense again. Haruto found himself on the bed, and the girl hugged him tightly by the head, saying that she had made her decision yesterday. She made it clear that she now chose to be with him and was willing to let him act as he chose. Covered in sweat, he wondered in confusion whether he could really do whatever he wanted, remembering that he had returned to this world in search of a harem. What was happening seemed too incredible, and he could not bring himself to accept it as normal. Early in the morning, Laura abruptly called him to get ready for training, and he and Celestia exchanged puzzled glances. He noted to himself that Laura had a strange combination of menace and attraction, which made you constantly on guard around her. Later, two girls stood under the streams of water. One remained calm with her eyes closed, while the other, slightly embarrassed, lifted her leg, checking herself. The guy watching nearby did not hide his admiration for what he saw, as if he had encountered something new for himself. Haruto crossed his arms and felt awkward while one of the people present said that something unusually pleasant seemed to be happening inside. During training, he forced himself to calm down and concentrate so as not to be distracted by unnecessary thoughts. Lori channeled magical energy into Sharon, empowering them both, and Haruto watched the process closely. Her short-haired partner suggested trying to move right now, and she readily agreed, immediately testing her body in action. Haruto noticed the sharp increase in his performance and called it crazy, while Laura eagerly admitted that such a level could not be achieved through training alone. Lori hugged Sharon, who laughed and added that she wouldn't do that for anyone else. Haruto wondered how much Sharon had changed Lori in just one day after their interaction, and he felt resentful of the time he had previously spent on long studies. With his sword in hand, he parried the blow and realized that such magical power usually required years of discipline, but the source of this power was close to him, and this was also part of the hero's strength. Haruto stood quietly in the background while Laura admitted with a carefree laugh that she had no idea, a playful air to her demeanor. He remembered that the last time he had been to the beach was during a school trip, after which he asked why they had come to the sea today and whether any special training was planned, while two girls were standing nearby on the shore. Soon he enthusiastically suggested taking a bath and hastened to begin undressing, demonstrating obvious readiness. However, the young man then asked in surprise what was going on when Laura asked a counter-question, and Celestia was puzzled why he didn't take off his clothes before swimming. He explained that she had failed to clarify in advance what she needed to take with her, while she admitted that she did not have a swimsuit. Laura, a little nervously, noted that there was no one around and that it shouldn't be a problem. Haruto privately decided that his interlocutor was being stubborn until she admitted that his gaze was what was causing her the most concern. He tried to explain the difference between boys and girls, but someone pointed out that his own chest also remained exposed. The young man said that he was ready to take off his lower clothing, after which Laura asked him what he would do next. Meanwhile, the girl with flushed cheeks accused someone of constantly staring at her, calling it unacceptable. She again emphasized her dissatisfaction, not hiding her embarrassment and irritation. Haruto was taken aback when one of them, with a mischievous expression, reproached him for leaving her alone. Lori, in a light outfit, asked him to leave the gentleman who never thinks about anything extra alone, and suggested that they move on while he watched what was happening. He tried to call out to the others, wanting to join in, but Laura firmly stated that it was better for him to swim on his own. The red-haired companion laughed, and the short-haired one asked her in surprise not to say such a thing. Haruto, still in his underwear, ran off quickly, while a remark about his indifference was heard off-screen. Later, he went inside where he was warmly greeted by a smiling girl who addressed him by name, and he was surprised to find that he had been expected for a long time. The young man tensed when the maid reported a new assignment from the Imperial Capital Guild, admitting that she had expected something different. Soon, the head of the Torres Guild, Kreutz, introduced himself while sitting at the table, while 4 people stood in front of him. The older man with the monocle remarked that he had heard many good things about the young woman, and she confirmed the rumors with a gentle smile. Lori confidently declared that she now belonged to Haruto, while Sharon introduced herself decisively, and he felt awkward being caught between them. An elderly man with a mustache and beard, clasping his hands in front of him, noted the charm of his 2 young companions, while someone silently watched behind him. Haruto was surprised to hear the mention of mentoring, and the elder soon explained that a request had come from the imperial capital for his participation in that capacity. As if protecting those around him, he recounted how he had been able to change the course of events when the hero Ryan had been cornered by a representative of the demonic race, while Celestia listened attentively nearby. The interlocutor cleared his throat, intending to continue his explanation, but Haruto lightly touched Laura's head, hinting that she should not say anything unnecessary, and she responded quietly. He then explained that the hero Ryan was training hard in the imperial capital and wished to see the young man as his mentor, while 2 girls stood behind him, listening intently to the conversation. Haruto looked stunned when one of them excitedly announced that he was going to become the hero's mentor, while the other just chuckled, thinking it was expected. He considered the invitation to go to the imperial capital and admitted that he had thought about a similar trip himself. Recalling the past, the young man noted that after defeating the Demon Lord in Andalcia, he was almost drawn into the struggle between the aristocratic factions, although he did not seek to participate. In the end, as he realized, he failed to take anyone's side, and therefore it was easier to eliminate him by sending him back to Earth. The long-haired girl thought that no one here knew about her former role as a hero, while the short-haired girl explained that she preferred to stay away from the royal nobility. Haruto returned to the room with enthusiasm, where he was greeted by the maids, and he decided that the invitation to the palace was a chance to get closer to them. Soon he found himself surrounded by the care of 2 attentive maids, and it seemed to him that they were serving the royal court itself. Among those gathered, one of the girls asked if she could accompany him to the imperial capital, and he looked slightly puzzled. After this, Haruto firmly asked Laura to go with him, warning that otherwise he would refuse the mission, and she agreed without hesitation. He stood silently until Laura called out to him, and Celestia, blushing slightly, remarked that it was natural for a woman to want to be near him, and the other supported her. The redhead was surprised by the word she heard, while the dark-haired one asked not to discuss such a thing in front of everyone, and she admitted that she was looking forward to the future with interest. Haruto, wiping away his sweat, declared that after the distance they had traveled, there was no turning back, to which Laura reproached him with displeasure for such statements. Embarrassed, he told his two companions that each of them was important to him, while one listened attentively and the other was lost in thought. In the end, he remained confident and made it clear that he was ready to answer her request if necessary. Haruto, visibly embarrassed, confessed to the two girls that each of them was important to him in their own way, while one listened attentively and the other was lost in thought. He asked her gently if she was okay, and Laura nodded slightly nervously while Celestia stood by, remaining calm. Then he wondered if he should have said something like that at all, and Laura suddenly noticed that someone was acting strange, after which she asked what had happened to her. Haruto worriedly wondered if he had scared her and if she would change her mind about going with him tomorrow, but when he met her questioning gaze, he tried to convince himself that everything would be fine. Later, breathing heavily, he heard a curious girl with fox ears ask him about the reason for his fatigue, to which he happily reported the completion of the task. He explained that the magic used created soundproofing inside, making what was happening inaudible from the outside, while his companion, sitting on the bed, pondered this phenomenon. After this, the young man confidently declared that he was going to use a similar technique, and Laura looked at him with interest. Blushing, he admitted his intention to violate someone's boundaries, which caused her to react with surprise. Meanwhile, the girl mischievously reproached him for feigning loyalty to Sharon, but at the same time allowing himself more than he should have. Laura awkwardly suggested naming the place after a special name, and he quickly asked for a moment, but they soon settled on a more discreet option and shared a kiss. Haruto asked, confused, what he meant by the words togetherness, and she admitted that she felt the same way. He admitted that this was the first time he had encountered something like this, while Celestia enthusiastically noted that this was new to her as well, and Kagu offered to join the others. The young man felt embarrassed, feeling how it was getting cramped, while Laura reacted with surprise, and Charlotte carefully pressed herself against him. He was taken aback when the two girls hugged him, and their lips barely touched each other in their first kiss. Later, Haruto fell asleep with a restless expression on his face, as the three of them found it difficult to fit on the narrow bed. Laura and Celestia lay next to him, acknowledging slight discomfort but agreeing with what was happening. He woke up looking tired but content as they both continued to hug him, remarking on his stamina. The long-haired girl smiled softly, regretting the need to part, but expressed hope for a future meeting. Haruto enthusiastically promised to return, and Laura, blushing, asked him not to look for anyone else until then. In conclusion, he admitted that he had given his name as a guarantor, while the two girls looked at him with different feelings. Haruto received a scroll from an older man who wished him luck on his journey and explained that it would make it easier to get into the palace, while a smiling girl stood nearby. He and his two companions thanked them for their help and waved goodbye with smiles. On the way, the young man wondered why the world needed another hero and demon lord if he had already defeated one, suggesting that the answers might be hidden in the imperial capital. The country road led to Torres, where the carriage was waiting, and soon Haruto was sitting between Laura and Sharon, while she yawned and he thought about meeting these important people. He promised to definitely come back and bring more girls next time so that he could return with a real triumph. The group set off along an alley lined with trees, and one of them suggested heading to the imperial capital, to which the other agreed with excitement. They left the city gates and headed to Militias, the capital of the Kingdom of Milis, accepting the royal family's request to retrain Leon. The short-haired girl admitted that at first Torres seemed impressive to her, but the capital turned out to be much more majestic, while the others silently looked around. Before them lay a huge city with a majestic castle on a hill, the streets of which were filled with people from all corners of the country. Soon they saw the massive church building that served as the headquarters of the organization, where the Holy Sword was established and people were already gathering around it. Haruto looked around nervously when Laura noticed that she seemed to hear a voice coming from the direction of the temple, causing him to become confused. He decided that it was just his imagination, and his long-haired companion assured him that she would take charge of the conversation with the royal family during the audience. Someone reminded us that we need to speak as neutrally as possible, and another agreed. Soon the young man was delighted to see a maid appear before them, who politely invited them inside, and they thanked her as they entered the open door. Latina introduced herself as the third princess of the kingdom, standing confidently between the maid and the older man, Celestia politely greeted Haruto by name, and he, slightly confused, realized that she really was a princess in front of him. Later, he was served in surprise by two maids while the princess watched from the side. The blonde girl lay down, asking to be handled with care, wondering if this was heaven. Haruto apologized to the princess for being late, but she brushed it off, calling it empty fantasies. The determined woman quickly addressed Night Aura Roses, calling her Highness, and someone nearby immediately apologized. Haruto asked if this was the night he had seen earlier, and Laura readily confirmed it, while the other girl reached out and offered him a seat as he was already expected. The princess explained again that she wanted him to train Leon for 3 months, and he recalled the conversation about the upcoming operation to liberate the fortress captured by demons, which would take about the same amount of time. The young man smiled modestly, noting that he was simply trying, while the girl sitting next to him looked shy, and the woman expressed relief that he was in Torres at that moment. Celestia quietly laughed at the table. Haruto was confused, and Charlotte remembered that she had behaved impudently at their first meeting, but admitted that he had managed quite well without her help. He nervously apologized for someone, but the calm woman assured him that Latina's consent was enough, after which she suggested calling her Haruto-kun, causing him surprise. The cheerful girl noticed that this sounded friendly and called out to him, and he explained that he had arranged for a personal assistant for the three of them. Haruto was surprised when Celestia called out to Mina and explained that she had recently arrived in the capital and would now be under their care, while someone quietly peeked out from behind the door. Mina introduced herself with a smile and a willingness to help, and he remembered that it was she who had stood at the entrance earlier. Someone explained that in front of them was a living space allocated for guests and showed a stone house with a tower among the greenery. Haruto and his two companions entered the bright room of the former royal villa, where they were informed that they could use everything. He offered to help with a slight grin in case of problems, while Laura, blushing, thought about something of her own and looked forward to the evening with interest. The young man asked what was going on, while the long-haired girl asked the other one if she was really going to share a room with him. He noticed the door to the basement and tried to open it, but it was locked and only trembled. Haruto was surprised when someone used the search spell, and their palms flashed with light, examining the space around them. He blushed, realizing that the door was indeed closed, and this turned out to be quite understandable. The young man decided he couldn't handle it, while Laura suggested tying up Lori and Sharon, and the redhead added an idea for an easier option. Haruto felt embarrassed again as he thought about the proposal, but he doubted its feasibility. Later, he was relaxing in a hot spring with Laura and Eris, feeling awkward while his companions enjoyed the water. He tried to move, but Laura hugged him from behind, and he asked her to wait. In a warm, steamy bath, he found himself next to a girl who remembered the pleasant sensations of his embrace, and he thought that even here it could be comforting. Haruto caught that she had just said something like a meow and noted the sound in surprise, after which the cat girl quickly apologized and disappeared. After leaving the bathhouse, he and Rin bumped into Mina, who bowed deeply in apology, and he explained that he had already told her about his relationships with girls, causing Rin to blush slightly. There were intertwined figures on the floor, the rustling of clothes could be heard, and he thought about the old saying about great men being inclined to pleasure. Later, two girls approached him, politely addressing him as Lord Amaji and remarking on his reputation as a distinguished adventurer, while one of them studied him closely. The armed man stated that he had not yet seen the true capabilities of his dark-haired companion and asked to demonstrate her strength before further action. Haruto confidently stated that he could handle it, but one of them spoke sharply, and others reminded him that he had come by official invitation. Several armed fighters agreed to cross blades, and he drew his sword, preparing to attack. Meanwhile, his companion again expressed dissatisfaction, but the others reminded him of his status and condemned his rudeness. The group decided to have a duel, and Haruto stepped forward to meet his opponents. Scratching the back of his head, he noticed that his opponents did not pose a serious threat, which surprised the girl standing next to him. The soldiers decided to hold a tournament in the format of a round-robin fight with wooden swords without the use of magic. Haruto soon found himself facing a determined opponent while the three girls watched the intense battle. He asked Leon why he had given up so quickly, and Leon reminded him of the restrictions on magic. The young man noted that the battle could not be reduced to simple schemes and handed the sword to the surprised Celestia. He then delivered a powerful kick, causing his opponent to lose his balance. Haruto explained that he was able to attack without weapons or magic, using distracting maneuvers. He supported his tired comrade by showing how to return a lost sword. The girl called out to Leon, thinking about demonstrating together. The young man advised the three not to go on a frontal attack, but to create the illusion of finding a weak spot. Haruto looked pleased, while Celestia cautiously agreed, and the others confirmed his role as mentor. The cloaked figure quietly explored the church, overhearing a conversation in which someone asked Leon for another round, admitting to being especially strict with men. Haruto reflected on the influence of the Harmonian Church and its pursuit of peace, while Leon, surrounded by knights, was considered a hero officially recognized by the order. He remembered the strange voice he had heard here earlier, and despite his curiosity, he gave the order to continue the search. Standing against the wall with his sword behind his back, the young man admitted that he couldn't yet figure out what was hidden inside, but intended to return to that later. He soon noticed an invitation from Princess Latina and greeted her, noting that it had been a long time since their last meeting. Laura said that she asked everyone to leave them alone, and he turned towards her in bewilderment. The girl quietly admitted that she wanted to talk in private, and this caught him off guard. Celestia mentioned Leon cautiously, asking how he had changed during the month of training, and Haruto hesitated. He explained that he listened attentively to advice, had a good disposition, and was gradually becoming stronger, although he was not sure where the conversation was leading. The young man listened attentively as Charlotte admitted that she knew about his investigation into the church and was going to reveal the truth. He suddenly tensed, sweating as Celestia calmly stated that she had also checked his background while a shadow watched outside the window. She unfolded the document and noted that although he had listed Mild Village in the Torres Guild, there was no evidence of his identity found there. Haruto began to stutter, realizing the possible exposure, and internally searched for a way out. He asked for a favor cautiously, but someone, clutching the bench, refused to discuss it in front of others. Sitting there in confusion, he asked about Leon's connection to the church, and Celestia confirmed his recognition as the hero of the Holy Sword without a doubt. The woman explained that the hero's origins and past remained unknown, as he stood silently nearby. Haruto wondered if Leon had been summoned into this world in the same way he had been, and was told that they were similar in that sense. Celestia asked about the Holy Sword at the window, and he noted to himself that the man's manner of speech did not seem earthly. Charlotte revealed that they belonged to the Millis royal family, but even her father was unaware of the church's possession of such weapons. The long-haired woman added that she had studied many of the city's myths and legends without finding any mention of such a blade, and then noted that the Holy Sword and its hero were a hidden treasure of the royal family. Haruto wondered why he was so easily trusted with such a delicate matter, while two girls stood nearby, one in a fluffy dress, the other only partially visible over her shoulder. He cautiously asked if this meant that the church was placing its hopes on the royal family, but the woman gently pointed out that it was much more complicated than that. Listening to Charlotte's explanation of the good relations between the palace and the church, he still doubted that the other side would give in without resistance, and when she lightly touched his head, he became embarrassed and asked why the choice fell on him. Charlotte looked at him searchingly, asking a direct question about trust, and he admitted that his origins were fictitious and his past remained largely murky, feeling uncomfortable under her gaze. Blushing and breaking out in a white sweat, he honestly added that he didn't trust her completely, although her confidence and closeness made his heart beat faster. Laura coughed softly and admitted that she had been born with the ability to see the thoughts of others, which caused him obvious confusion. She explained that it was more of a curse, albeit a weak one, allowing one to only vaguely grasp other people's intentions. Haruto understood why she kept staring at him so intently, and Celestia clarified that the ability works best when she is alone with the person and concentrates. With a gentle smile, Celestia asked him what he had been doing at the church, and he, feeling a little uneasy, thought that he still didn't trust her completely, even though he found her charming. Sitting down opposite Charlotte, he listened to her calm remark that there was no harm in discussing it. He knew he had little choice, but she suggested including the investigation in the terms of her request and asked his opinion. The princess's direct request made him tense up, his thoughts involuntarily returning to the promised reward, and someone nearby awkwardly admitted that the question of reward had not yet been discussed. Haruto froze, taking in the situation, while his interlocutor calmly noted that she understood his doubts. Standing behind her, he heard gratitude for Leon's month-long preparation and an assurance that he himself was not connected with the church. She asked quietly if he was ready to take her side, and there was hope in her voice. He nodded slowly, and Celestia half-jokingly remarked that it would be possible to get by with money without resorting to such radical methods. Celestia leaned slightly toward him, offering other options in place of the previous reward, smiling softly and suggesting that he postpone the question. Laura moved even closer, cupping his face with her hands and assuring him that she could also offer an alternative if she wanted, which made him noticeably embarrassed. He froze as she leaned in and touched his lips, and for a moment he didn't even know if it was really a kiss. Pulling away, she offered to discuss everything later if he showed interest, and asked him to send a message through Mina for communication. Haruto blushed, thinking that Princess Utena looked very cute, but at that moment, Laura noticed him and called out loudly, pointing in his direction. He quickly apologized, while she, crossing her arms and frowning, reproached him for neglecting his alphabet lessons again, asking where he had been. Haruto nervously tried to justify himself, denying any ill intentions, while the fire-haired girl accused him of looking for pretty girls. Later, he relaxed in the bath after a hard workout, thinking about how Sharon and Lori had unexpectedly teamed up against him, while nearby, two girls were chatting animatedly. A week had passed since he had made his promise to Princess Latina, and since then she had been attending Leon's classes more and more often, watching them from the sidelines. She called out to Haruto with a warm expression on her face, and he wondered if her emotions were genuine or if it was just an attempt to get his attention. The sweat-covered young man suddenly realized that he was in a second trap, but his attention soon turned to Leon. He listened with concern as the blonde man reported that Leon had lost his memories of the time before he was recognized as a hero. As he sank into the water, Haruto wondered if amnesia could be a side effect of the summoning and decided that he wasn't lying. He remembered asking to hold the sacred sword, admiring the quality of its craftsmanship and the power of the magic within. He noted with concern that only Leon was capable of using this weapon, as the materials and magical infusion were crucial. Meanwhile, Lori easily deflected the inexperienced youth's blows with the help of an air shield while he tried to unleash the hidden power of the sword. Leon raised the blade confidently, and those watching from the side acknowledged that he was its rightful owner. As Haruto entered the bathhouse, he thought the church was trying to win the favor of the royal family when someone quietly addressed him. Laura, wrapped in a towel, offered to help him wash his back, and he reacted with slight embarrassment. The young man answered the question about his original mission awkwardly, realizing what she was getting at. She blushed and wondered if this was a cunning plan, turning to Master Haruto. Sitting on the bed, he scratched the back of his head and thought that he was no longer just a former hero, realizing that he had played by Latina's rules. Later, he lay next to the sleeping girl with fox ears, finding her cute despite his inner doubts. In the end, Haruto gently stroked Laura's head while she rested next to him, deciding that everything was fine and there was no point in worrying anymore. The girl pointed angrily at Haruto, who jumped up from the bed while the other one stood next to him with her hands on her hips, declaring that he had spent the night with Mina. The winged companion asked Mina with concern about her condition, while she sat on the bed, clutching the blanket and looking around. Haruto, breathing heavily and lying shirtless, admitted that he had overdone it in the second round, and someone's voice from the side called out to him mockingly. The cat girl blushed, remembering their first soft experience, while the maid looked puzzled and demanded clarification. Laura noted with a sneer that he had finally noticed Mina, and he sheepishly objected, insisting that he didn't feel awkward. Meanwhile, the redhead gently patted his head, explaining to Sharon that he was just that kind of person, and she hesitantly agreed. However, he was soon surrounded by two girls, one of whom reproached Sharon for his dissatisfaction, while the other, approaching, demanded proof of his confidence. Haruto was taken aback when they offered to help, and remembering his past as a hero, he called out to Mina, who responded with a sly smile. He hesitated when the cat girl closed the door behind her, and the silver-haired girl admitted that she couldn't decide whether to participate in the storming of the fortress. She added that the operation was the perfect chance to penetrate the depths of the church undetected, winking confidently. Haruto just sighed, while the long-haired girl cheerfully noted that such an opportunity rarely arises. He considered the plan, then sighed heavily again, admitting he had no choice. Someone noted that after the fortress was recaptured, the church would hold a ceremony, and this could be a chance to get inside. Charlotte explained that the goal would be to eliminate the demon leader and the hero and his squad would lead the attack. They took him by the hand and asked him to create a diversionary maneuver near the walls, but he reminded them that he had not yet given his consent. She blushed, squeezed his hand, and asked for a favor, which caught him off guard. Haruto noticed that her gaze seemed to read his thoughts, and thought about the possibility of information being transmitted through Mina. In the end, he reluctantly agreed, while the confident woman declared that she would join the operation. He felt the pressure building and realized that it might be a trap, causing him to panic. Breathing heavily, he heard the long-haired girl call his name, pressing herself tightly against him. Laura, blushing and visibly nervous, quietly asked if he was ready to receive the reward, while Haruto, also embarrassed, began to answer hesitantly. He suddenly announced that he wanted Mina as a reward, causing Laura to ask in shock if she had heard correctly. The girl with fox ears explained that Mina's parents had died about 4 years ago, after which she had been brought into the palace as a maid of honor, and by the standards of fate, this had turned out to be a happy outcome for her. Mina shyly covered her mouth with her hands and blushed, and Haruto looked at her softly, remembering how sincerely she was happy about the offer to go with them. Embarrassed, he muttered that she was his now, aware of how dubious it sounded coming from his lips. He then carefully asked if she was Princess Latina, but she looked away and suddenly smiled brightly, cheerfully denying it. Turning to him with a beaming smile, she extended her hands and added that if he accepted her, Mina would follow her too. Haruto froze in surprise when the confident long-haired girl came closer and repeated that they could only be accepted together. The redhead admitted with alarm that she would soon be forced to marry, and the young man listened with obvious surprise and doubt. He couldn't help but wonder if she was already married, but soon realized that they were talking about a future marriage with a high-born aristocrat after she reached the age of 15, which the third princess told him about with calm humility. The long-haired girl pointed out that despite her lowly inheritance rights, she was still a princess and had previously taken it for granted, while he listened intently, a majestic figure towering behind her. With alarm, she recalled the reception in honor of the hero, where the likely future groom was already among the guests. Her reaction became noticeably nervous when one of the men proudly showed off an ugly pig face mask and the other laughed derisively. Haruto noted with a surprised grin that Latina was expressing herself much more harshly than he expected from the princess. Laura, trembling with indignation, firmly declared that she would never agree to such a thing, and Haruto calmly admitted that he understood her feelings. She nodded, understanding the restrictions, and he explained that even if he had agreed, he still would not have received permission since it would have meant acting against the state. She firmly recalled that she herself had asked her father to allow her to investigate the affairs of the hero Leon in the church, while he listened with noticeable anxiety. Haruto carefully noted that he had already been assigned to participate in the investigation, but Charlotte merely chuckled, stating that it was up to her to decide on the reward. She refused to break off the engagement alone, and he wondered whether it would not be wiser to first obtain an annulment of the marriage before talking about compensation. Finally, she confidently declared that if he, being stronger than the hero, took her side, her father would certainly change his mind, and a drop of sweat rolled down his face from the realization of the seriousness of the situation. Haruto considered that supporting the king along with the princess could be a beneficial alliance, and the idea didn't seem so bad to him, but she, slightly nervous, admitted that she wasn't sure of her feelings for him and quickly changed the subject. He announced with feigned determination that he would accept both Princess Latina and Mina as a reward, while the fair-haired girl calmly replied that she understood, and in the depths of his soul he reproached himself for being too trusting. The close-up of her beaming smile made him wonder if it was all an act, but his doubts melted away as they drew closer to each other. Haruto kissed Charlotte, declaring that he would take advantage of his advantage, and she, having already collected her thoughts, reasoned that the threat probably came from the monsters of the southern forests, and at that moment, the door quietly closed behind her. He explained that the fortress was now of strategic importance to the southern routes due to its proximity to the capital, and Laura listened carefully to the explanation. The silver-haired man added that the punitive detachment sent earlier was defeated because the enemy's leader turned out to be a greater demon. Haruto cautiously asked Lori if she had any connection with the southern forest and knew anything about the detachment's defeat, but she, half asleep and confused, only asked again, uncomprehendingly. He tried to find out if anyone knew more about the southern fortress, but was denied, after which another girl asked him to stop asking questions, and the blonde assured him that there was no need to worry. Meanwhile, the confident young man declared that the demon would be defeated, and someone nearby admiringly noted how handsome Leon was. Charlotte suggested that Haruto move forward and create a distraction near the fortress walls, and the narration emphasized the need to prepare him so that he would return unharmed. He carefully asked if they would be left alone, and after hearing a brief confirmation, he asked again, confused. After bowing, he listened to the reminder that the request came personally from Princess Latina, and he must prove himself worthy, after which he involuntarily thought about her. A few days later, Haruto was excitedly preparing for his date with Sharon, glad that they would be alone today and that he had been acting much more reserved lately. Laura sat on the bench with a soft smile, wondering if it was perhaps because of their nightly meetings, which she usually tried to keep within the bounds of propriety. While in the distance, Haruto was talking with another girl. He and his short-haired companion sat next to each other, holding hands tightly, and he caught himself thinking that this alone is enough for him to feel satisfied. Laura waved goodbye cheerfully, leaving the village on the adventurer's path, while Haruto and Celestia watched her retreating figure. He intercepted her hand, realizing that without her he could still be languishing in Torres, and she blushed shyly, taking his gesture for a desire to hug her. Later, Haruto sat nervously on a bench while an energetic girl asked him about his strength and his parents, and he internally tried to remain patient and find an appropriate answer. Haruto awkwardly admitted that he felt abandoned and knew nothing about his parents, causing the girl sitting next to him to widen her eyes in surprise. He apologized quietly, feeling he shouldn't have brought up the subject, and then explained that he had grown up in an orphanage and got along well with the kind, elderly caregivers. He gently reassured his hesitant interlocutor, carefully placing a bandage on her arm and assuring her that she had nothing to worry about. Later, he spoke of his journey to Andalglia, deliberately avoiding the topic of Earth and his past hero, while Sharon listened silently on a park bench. Sitting next to her, he handed Sharon the gift, noting that this was perhaps the first time he had ever talked so much about himself. Adding sheepishly that he had almost nothing in return, he saw how genuinely happy she was and blushed, admitting that this was not what he had originally meant. Meanwhile, he mentioned a secret passage based on the information he had received. Celestia was wondering about someone's memory, and Laura, who had sneaked in from the south and was hiding in the bushes, gave the feeling that something was not adding up. The group gathered at the entrance to the hidden tunnel, where one of them outlined the plan of advance and warned them to be careful, while someone on the side reminded themselves that their mission was a diversion. They decided to split up. Some would go through the forest to the fortress to scout and check the monsters, while Leon and the rest would use the secret passage to suppress internal resistance. Haruto sternly reminded them to remain vigilant and demonstrate the results of 3 months of training, emphasizing that the enemy was a demon, and in response he heard confident agreement. After the brief exchange, he felt a strange combination of annoyance and camaraderie, remembering how he had previously been sent forward with a pat on the head by stronger allies. He went over the plan again for Sharon and Lori, explaining that he would take the front position and use magic to lure the monsters out. Lori stated that she was taking on the role of the attacker and forbade anyone to get ahead of her, adding that Sharon would finish off those who broke through from behind. Haruto was reminded that if he was injured, he should retreat to Dewey for healing magic, and he briefly confirmed his readiness while the two girls watched the conversation in the forest. The short-haired companion encouraged the girls to take action. One of them confidently took charge, and both prepared to jump. Noticing the approaching figure, Haruto agreed that the chosen position was suitable, standing next to them, after which one of the girls closed her eyes and took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts. A sudden explosion near the fortress walls forced him to instantly cover Laura with a shield, while someone watched anxiously from the side. Breathing heavily and with a bloody sword in his hand, he noted the pungent smell of blood and calculated that the number of defeated monsters had already exceeded 100. After successfully repelling the magical attack, he, Laura, and Celestia decided to move forward and join up with Leon. At the end, he loudly shouted out the name Stein, which made Celestia flinch and the girl standing next to her cover her ears, while Celestia reacted with restraint and slightly displeasure.